Hello and welcome to Right Decisions. I'm Tammy Moye Johnson, your host. It's my pleasure to come in your homes weekly with a show that's created to provide tools for success. You have heard me say it before, that 50% of marriages ends in divorce. What you have not heard me say is that the percentage of spouses thinking about having an extramarital affair is higher. 74% of men and 68% of women say they would have an affair if they knew they would never get caught. Today, we're taking a look at a topic that was requested by a viewer. The topic is infidelity. We're discussing infidelity and affair recovery. According to the Journal of Marital and Family Therapy, there's 41% of marriages where one or both spouses have admitted to either physical or emotional infidelity. What can we do about this seemingly increased practice in marriages? Well, I've asked expert and affair recovery coach Cindy Cartee of Cartee Counseling to join me. Welcome, Cindy, to Right Decisions, and thank you so much for discussing this important but taboo topic with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
Let's just talk about for definition. That's just for the record.
Okay.
What do we mean when we say infidelity? And then some people say adultery. So let's talk about that first.
You know, starting with couples talking about what is their definition. To one partner, affair could mean you're on Facebook with an ex and you haven't told me about it. For someone else, it means a sexual act. For someone else, it's an emotional attachment. So the definition between the couple is very important. You know, there are implicit and explicit agreements when making that commitment of monogamy to say, what are we going to consider? And a lot of couples don't really talk about, this to me is the definition of an affair.
You know what, and that's important because I think with some people, they think as long as they're not having sexual intimacy with someone else that, well, I'm okay.
Right.
Where most importantly, if you are attached to someone else where that spouse is now secondary to another person, that's an affair. And am I right with a lot of times it start with emotions first, emotional attachment, and then it can lead to sexual?
Oftentimes starts out innocently. People think, well, I would never have an affair. They start the friendship. They begin to share information that they're not sharing with their spouse. They find themselves in a situation that they can't believe they're in. You know, and if there's anything that you're doing that you don't want your partner to know about that would be in secret, that needs to be questioned.
Absolutely. Because as a partner, you want to, and you have shared this before about intimacy, INTO-U-I-C.
Absolutely. Don't you love that?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
That you're sharing everything. And it's not just the physical, but it's the mental, it's the emotional, and it's the spiritual. You're close. That's powerful.
So when you're sharing that with someone else and not with your partner, you're vulnerable to that affair. You know, and a lot of times people will say, well, I would never be unfaithful. Actually, a person is more at risk when they say that and take that approach than if they say, I would never plan to, I'm going to be cautious and aware of, I know that we can all be vulnerable if we're not protecting our marriage. So it's really important because the I never often set someone up to not protect their marriage.
Absolutely.
Really important.
Do you think they should set guidelines in, and I know we're going to get to affair recovery in a little bit with people who've gone through it, but now let's just talk about some precautions people can take. You know, when my husband and I got married, one of the things that we said that we were not going to eat alone or go out on a date with someone else. You know, this is like, you know, because we realized that things start from friendships. You know? And so we kind of just, and like you said, between the couple, but for, you know, and there are other couples that I know, they're like, hey, Tammy, you can go with, when I was single, you can go out with my husband. But, you know, just, and it depends. But for he and I, we just didn't want, we wanted to set some guidelines down. So we don't go out one-on-one with the opposite sex.
Which is protecting your relationship.
Absolutely.
And couples are different. Couples handle it differently. It's just important to know it is a risk. And definitely you want your partner to know if you're going to be doing something that may be in question. Exactly, exactly. And it's so innocent sometimes. So often couples come in and the partner who's had the affair is just so overwhelmed with their own shame and shock of how did I do this?
How did it happen?
I never thought I'd do this. You know.
So is that why a lot of times in the office it says that there's a higher percentage of affairs beginning in the office?
Because a lot of conversations, a lot of time, people innocently are talking about how are the children, how is your spouse? And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, if I've had a bad morning and I come and say, oh, it was a bad morning. You just have to be careful with the conversations had, that you don't disclose too much or start talking about your problems with a coworker. You need to be talking about your problems with your partner.
Absolutely.
I need to come to you and say, you know what, I'm really upset about this morning, and us work it out, not me go vent and get someone else's advice about it. Because then I can't solve the problem with you.
Absolutely, that's a good point. If there's something that is frustrating you, irritating you,
Right.
or that you need to get out,
Yeah.
who better to share with than your spouse?
It's the only way to solve it.
That's the
Yeah.
and I wasn't really just talking about an issue with your spouse,
Right.
Because a lot of times they do that
Right.
too. Talk with someone else
Right.
about their spouse, but if there's an issue that that is very close to their heart, that's why you have a partner.
Right. And that's where so often it is innocent. It's not always in it. Some people are going on different websites looking to have an affair. Some people are innocently finding themselves in an affair. There's so many risk factors today with the internet. Facebook. I love it, but boy, it can be dangerous too.
So what are some of the characteristics? What would be some of the reasons a person will go and look for an affair?
Again, sometimes it's innocent, like, oh, I just want to be friends with this person and catch up and see how their life is. And then all of a sudden they find themselves with feelings and conversations that they wouldn't want their partner to know about, or leads them into that affair. Sometimes people do seek out having an affair. There are websites where people can go and do that. I recommend going to therapy if you're even thinking in that direction,
Absolutely.
But I don't even know that there are websites where people are married looking for someone else who's married to have an affair. It's scary.
Well, can we advise to our viewers that, number one, let's just say if it's innocent, that, you're in the office and you find yourself, talking to someone, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you have some feelings there, that at that point, then talk with your spouse.
Affair-proof your relationship. Change the contact. Change the boundaries.
I love
Go
it.
talk to someone. If people would come in and say, I'm not happy, I'm thinking about someone else or ending the marriage, that's when to get help. And the sad thing is often people don't get help until they're already in it. And I love it when people come in. I don't love that people have affairs, but to say, I want out. I don't want my partner to know. I don't want to hurt my partner. What am I doing? That they can stop it before it goes any further. But a lot of times it's not until they're in the throes of it. And then it's hard for a lot of people to get out because there's this chemical that goes off in our brain. And they feel in love. And then they start saying things like, well, I don't know if I love my spouse anymore. Well, you can't feel that love if you have that chemistry going off with someone else. And if we're not working on our issues together, then I may not feel that love, but it can very much be present and rekindled.
So in other words, what they're feeling is not love, because the true definition of love is not, and they may be feeling lust, but
or infatuation.
Or infatuation, yeah. But love is really a commitment.
Right.
And then sometimes you're not going to have all those emotional feelings, but you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to spend time with this. This is who I made a commitment with.
Right.
And so you're going to make sure you're developing that relationship.
Right. Well, and when you first met your partner, you had those feelings. And to compare after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of marriage to say, well, we're dealing with children and parents and conflict, and then someone else comes along to send off that chemistry. The idea is I'm no longer in love with my partner is not true. It's love is ever changing. It becomes a new stage of love. That first stage is referred to as romantic.
I tell you what, let me take a break, and then
Okay.
when we come back, we're going to pick up about that chemistry piece.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
When Bob got to the accident, I was terrified. His injuries were so severe, but once we knew he was going to be okay, what then?
I couldn't go back to work for a long time, and we got way behind on our bills.
We had hired an attorney, but when our case kept dragging on, we didn't know how we were going to get by. Thankfully, our attorney knew about Oasis Legal Finance.
Oasis looked at our case, and before our case was settled, they got us the money.
The very next day.
At first, I wasn't so sure. What if we lost the case? How would we be able to pay back Oasis? But then I found out if we did lose, we wouldn't have to pay them back. So there was no risk in doing it. No risk.
There are no out-of-pocket costs and no payments until your case is settled. If you lose your case, you don't have to repay Oasis. There's no risk. Call Oasis now to see how much money you can get before your case settles.
Call now, 1-800-826-0801. 1-800-826-0801.
Welcome back to Right Decisions. We're talking about infidelity and affair recovery. Cindy, before we went to break, we were talking about the chemistry that sometimes people get, maybe with someone on the office or someone that they've talked to, and they may not have that with their spouse because of all the things that happen in life. And so, but they're getting confused with what love is versus that just, okay, it's just a feeling. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Sure. In the beginning, it's referred to as romantic love. It's PEA, phenylethylamine, along with other cocktail. And it's not supposed to last, that in love high.
Yes.
It's like a drug. It's a
Right.
love drug. And then over time, other chemicals kick in, and then it's real love. And real love is commitment. Real love is intentional. Real love is conscious. It's work.
It is.
That romantic love is easy. It's effortless.
right.
It's fun. And it's easy for couples to forget that they had that. And so many couples don't re-romanticize and rekindle and keep that spark going. And then they feel like they're in love with someone else when they have a more mature love with their partner. They just have to do the work of relationship. Because that romantic love will end without a fair partner. And you're going to land right back at having to do the work. And you might as well do it with your partner.
And I like what you said before, like when they get into that relationship, then they're like, oh, I don't want to hurt my spouse. So that shows that that love there.
That
you
love is
care
there.
about your spouse, but then you have this over here. And I think for so many people, they think that, oh, this is okay, I can live with this. You know, they know I'm not leaving my spouse, so you have this on the side. Maybe there's those people who look out that website you were talking about. But you know, but the bottom line is we should be trying to please God. And when you please God, a person makes a covenant with the Lord and say, I'm going to be faithful to my spouse. And so we need to get back in line with that. Let's talk about signs of infidelity or people having an affair. What are some signs that, you know, our viewers can and not that I want people dwelling on these things, but I think that in research, they say there are some signs. So let's just hit it briefly.
Right. You know, if your intuition says there's something going on here, you know, go to your partner and say, I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm curious. You know, having that communication. If your partner is not talking to you about the problems in the relationship, their frustrations, that doesn't necessarily mean they're having an affair. If they're on the internet at night, late, they're not coming to bed with you, they're slapping their computer down quick because they don't want you to see what they're looking at, texting, and they're locking their phone up and they don't want to show it to you. You know, we all have our privacy, but there's a difference in privacy and secrecy. And so there are some signs. If someone is, addiction sadly is so prevalent in society and under the influence and out and about. And so paying attention to your sixth sense, talking to your partner. If you find things that you think, who's this note from, who's this text from, don't ignore it, talk about it. Because unconsciously, this is a hard one for a lot of people to imagine, unconsciously a person can be in denial and actually collude in the fact that there's an affair going on by not addressing what the issues are. You can help your partner get out of it by talking about what you're seeing's going on.
And I think that you hit a key point there is to talk and to communicate. To address. I mean, if you're intimate, you're married, you have a covenant, a commitment, you should be able to talk about anything. You know, I saw this one show where this young man had a lust problem. In fact, he was, he's not in the state, but he was assistant pastor, and he said that he was dealing with this. He was transparent with his wife. And then when he had that issue or when something would come up, his wife said, okay, what I need to do? Do I need to have sex? Do we need to do this? You know? But they were battling together. And it was just that, you know, he was molested when he was young, and then he started doing pornography and what have you. And so it was something that he had to deal with internally. But guess what? he talked about it with his wife.
Right.
He was transparent. I think the number one thing that when we're talking about affair and infidelity, and I think people who are doing that, they want to get out.
Right.
But the number one thing is just be open and honest
Right.
with your spouse, be transparent. Because where you have out in the open, the devil cannot make bigger, you know? So even though we're talking about signs here, I think it's important to go and like you said, talk. And then, go ahead,
Well,
Cindy.
you know, pornography addiction is so rampant as well, and sexual addiction. And for a partner to say, you know, here's something that we can deal with together, it makes a couple stronger.
That's that maturity you were talking
Exactly.
about, that mature love. And I think it
Right.
also takes a very mature spiritually
Right.
couple to know that
Right.
we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, and there's there's spirits, and they're together.
Right.
You know, it's not intentional that he's battling or she's battling something,
Right.
and that they come together as one. They pray together and they do that, and
Exactly.
you become
Devotion
stronger.
together.
Yes, ma'am. Devotion together. I want to get a little bit into, okay, let's say that someone knows that they have an affair,
Right.
or affair has happened with your
Right.
spouse, and what are some of the recovery steps that they should take?
First thing I want to say about that, I want to look at the camera and say affair recovery is possible.
Absolutely.
We hear about divorce. We hear about people ending relationships and separating. And it's such a private matter that often people don't go and talk about what's happened. To seek help even. They start talking about the divorce process. But the recovery process is get a therapist and get a therapist fast. Too often couples try to do it on their own, and sadly, they can make things worse. And so get in with a therapist fast so that they know how to communicate about it, how to do the discovery, how to work through the crisis. You know, a lot of people, they can't sleep. They feel like they can't breathe. They feel like they can't get out of the bed. They don't know what to do.
It so hurts.
Do we stay together? Do we not? We're disillusioned. Who have you been? Who are we as a couple? I mean, it's devastating. And so getting that help, knowing that the therapist will help navigate those questions, those answers, how to build trust. Trust is, of course, imperative. It's what's destroyed. And then working together to become a stronger, more deeper, committed couple. A lot of people think, how do you do that through such tragedy? But it's possible.
How long does it take to heal from an affair?
You know, it depends on the type of affair. It depends on the couple. It depends on the commitment of the relationship. It depends on whether or not they get help early on. It depends on so many factors. But to build that trust back, you're looking at a year or two. And then it's not that you're going to forget it. I tell people God gave me this scar so I could talk about it. You know, I don't look at this every day. It doesn't hurt every day. When it does, I need to take care of it. There's a wound. There'll be a wound in your marriage. You're not going to forget it, but you can forgive it. It won't hurt the way it does right when it happens. So it just depends on the couple and the affair.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to take another break.
Okay.
And then we'll come back. We're going to talk more steps for affair recovery and a little bit about that trust.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Imagine being able to clear your breakouts fast with a revolutionary new acne treatment that's actually good for your skin. Announcing all new Proactive Plus, the combination of acne medicine plus ultra perfecting skincare. Television star Kristen Ritter calls it a miracle.
I love the new Proactive Plus. It's fighting all my breakouts, and my skin is like porcelain.
The results are astonishing. Your skin is not only clear, but smooth and sexy. It's our smartest, fastest, most effective solution ever. And now, new skincare is in every step to balance acne-prone skin with needed hydration and more.
I have to tell you this is different. Just look at my before and after pictures. That doesn't lie.
So grab your phone and dial the number on your screen now, because today, shipping is free. And get 3 free gifts, a $96 value for just $29.95. Call now.
You will love your skin.
So who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to Right Decisions. We're talking about infidelity and affair recovery. Cindy, before we left for the break, we were talking about that, hey, it's possible to get back where you were after an affair.
Beyond where you've ever been.
I love that.
Beyond where you've ever been, because you'll be stronger from it.
Well, what you say that, well, how so? Tell me about that.
When you come to one another and say, I'm going to forgive you, let's recommit, let's work on this, let's talk about the problems we were having that maybe we weren't talking about, that we're going to be in this together. Just the whole process of rebuilding, rekindling. I could talk about it for an entire show, but the couple can be far stronger and end up taking something that they thought might end them and a new monogamy. There's a book called New Monogamy, and it's our new commitment to one another. It's the new marriage. You know, a snake sheds its skin, and as we grow and we change, a marriage is ever changing, from before children, after an affair. So it can be a new marriage, a stronger marriage.
Taking those broken pieces and making them beautiful.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. And you do see a lot of that too with couples, for what in the celebrities, the people in the in the news or what have you, that they make a commitment to continue on in spite of things that may have taken place. And then I think the key there is forgiveness.
Right. And seeing the otherness. You know, later stage recovery is being aware of, how did my partner get vulnerable? Not just I'm angry with you.
I love that.
But what was happening with you? How can I help you not go there again? What was happening with us? You know, and that God is love. And that to see the otherness of a partner, that affairs are not always about the marriage. That's real important.
Go ahead now.
You know, affairs can happen because of low self-esteem. A midlife crisis, as they call it. I like to call it an awakening, where we say, what's going on? If the couple's not having fun, you know, insecurities, childhood issues, so many reasons. And the initial part's the anger and the hurt because it's happening between the couple. But to be able to come back to that and say, what was happening? You know, how do we protect not just our marriage, but one another?
I love that. And that's that team part. That's that
Absolutely.
partner. That's
it's
true
we,
love.
not me.
That's right. That's true love. Yeah. We, not me.
Absolutely.
And we handle this together to death do us part. We can handle this. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that let's just go back to, okay, this is the fair recovery, can be stronger, what have you.
Right.
How can they put these guidelines, we talked a little bit about that, let's recap, of what preventing that.
Right.
You know, so that they don't have to, you know, go there. How do you make your marriage strong so that an affair won't happen?
Right. Well, I could talk about Imago too. It's a certain type of therapy, and it goes through the stages of love. Romantic, there's a power struggle stage, and then the real stage love. The number of people who make it to that real stage love, sadly, is low, because so many people don't do the work in their relationship. They look for the relationship to be easy, and they question, are they in love, when it gets hard, but it's work. And then kind of coming back around to your question, I want to make sure I answer it. Having those boundaries in place, knowing how to communicate. People need to do more premarital therapy. They need to learn what to do to go in and have what's referred to as a smart marriage, a conscious marriage, not one that just says, you know, I love you and we're all going to be okay. You got to know how to work it. And
so what do you mean by real work?
Real work. You know, there's a communication tool called conscious communication dialogue. You know, that people think they communicate really well, but the story I tell myself about what you're saying may not really be what you're saying. I've got my whole internal dialogue. I may be projecting on what you're saying. People miscommunicate and don't realize it. Or they shut down and they don't talk about their frustrations. Or, you know, they're not talking about really intimacy issues. Or certainly afraid to talk about, hey, I have this fantasy, or hey, I saw something on Facebook and I thought about it and I just thought, I need to talk to you about it. I mean, a lot of times people are scared to talk, really talk.
So the real work is making sure you're communicating. Is it something else as well?
Having fun together.
Having fun.
Having fun together. And when conflict should arise, to deal with it. Conflict is growth trying to happen. You think about how a fire that just burns uncontained is dangerous. But we can take a fire onto soil and contain it, and it can nourish the soil. We can take fire to iron, and we can mold it, and we can sculpt it. You can take conflict in your marriage and make a stronger marriage and sculpt one another. I could go so much into that, but
And then a lot of times people, it makes absolutely good sense. So a lot of times people see conflict and they don't want to deal with it.
And there's where they begin to disconnect, and there's where
where
your risk for affair. If you're not dealing with the conflict. And how many people look at conflict as a growth opportunity? They look at it as a problem. It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity.
Learn about your partner.
And I like what you said earlier too. If you can't handle it alone,
go get help.
Conflict. And we're not even just talking about affair now.
Yeah, go get help.
If you feel like, hey, when I address this with my spouse, he or she is not going to deal with it, get some help. Your marriage is worth it. Cindy, guess what? I'm going to have to end this conversation.
I can't
believe the time. Well, I do appreciate your time on this just so important topic, and we're going to have to get you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sometimes when we reach out to others time after time in a number of relationships, whether it's an emotional or physical attachment, we're trying to fill a void. That void can only be filled by Jesus. The root of having an affair is not an individual not getting enough attention. The root of this breach of covenant made to God regarding your spouse is a spiritual issue. Proverbs 6:32 says, "He who commits adultery lacks sense," that is spiritual sense, "and he who does it destroys himself." Please don't let the enemy, Satan, come to you and have you focus on what you don't have in the natural, this earthly realm. The void or emptiness that you have, whether you are the victim or the initiator of an affair, was meant to be filled by Jesus. Essentially, no one, not a spouse or any other human being, can fill your void but Jesus. There is hope. Jesus Christ is the answer for all things, and he longs to spend time with you. His love supersedes any earthly relationship. And if you don't know Jesus as your Lord and personal Savior, why don't you give him a try right now? Just simply believe with your heart that Jesus died for your sins and confess out loud Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Now you are at the beginning, just the beginning of your spiritual awakening. I encourage you to please seek a word-based church to continue to grow spiritually. If you are a victim or initiator of an extramarital affair, there is hope. Please seek help and guidance. You are not meant to go through this alone. Thank you for tuning in to Right Decisions, a show with a positive message. Remember, our objective at Right Decision is to leave you with tools and strategies to make your life easier and more successful. If you'd like to contact me, email me at twostomake-right-decisions@gmail.com. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye for now.